Well now, if you've been watching my recent videos, then you probably know I've been doing a review of the Spyro the Dragon trilogy in celebration of the remaster coming out this year. I'm not going to repeat myself here, so if you want to hear my full-length spiel about the trilogy as a whole and my stance on video games in general, head on over to the countdown I did of the first two games. Links are in the description below. Without wasting any more time, let's just dive right into it. Continuing from the success of the previous two games, the Dragon Kingdom is celebrating the Year of the Dragon, an event that only happens every 12 years in which new dragon eggs are born and hatched. Where all the mother dragons are at is anyone's guess, but anyway, things take a turn for the worse when a mysterious young sorceress named Bianca and her minions called Rhinox steal all the eggs and disappear down a hole that leads to the Forgotten Worlds, the place, as we eventually find out, where all the dragons used to live. But because of their absence, the magic in these ancient lands is slowly fading away, and our main villain, the sorceress, has a plan to restore all the magic with the help of the dragon eggs. Or does she? With the help of some old friends as well as new characters including Sheila the Kangaroo, Sergeant Bird the Penguin, Bentley the Yeti, and Agent 9 the Monkey, Spyro will have to use all his wit and skill to rescue the dragon eggs, defeat the sorceress, and restore the magic to the Forgotten Worlds. Okay, I'm probably about to tick off a lot of people, but remember, this is all just opinion. But this was probably the easiest list for me to compile because this game is my least favorite of the three.
Look, my reviews have destroyed whole cities!
I know, blasphemy, right? But just hear me out. Make no mistake, I do like this game. I love the entire trilogy, but everyone can't be number one. If we're gonna compare them all, one of them has to be in third place, and Year of the Dragon takes that spot. Why? Because look, let's take off the rose-colored glasses and admit that the old trilogy isn't perfect. All the games had their share of flaws as much as we all adored them. It's just that the third game is the one I have the most nitpicks with. While it's nice to see Hunter and Moneybags make a return and the Professor and Elora show up again, however briefly, we're also introduced to 4 new characters who agree to help Spyro on his quest. This is cool and all, but in a way, I think it takes a lot of the focus away from Spyro, who's the person I want to play as. Agent 9 I found kind of annoying, and Sergeant Bird is just okay. Bentley and Sheila were the ones I liked the most in terms of personality, and at least Sheila had the most smooth controls and operated the most similar to Spyro. The other 3 just moved way too slow for my taste, especially Sergeant Bird. The sorceress is a step up from Nasty Nork, but she's no Ripto. True, her plans are pretty diabolical, which I won't spoil here, but her personality isn't as memorable. It doesn't help that she shares no screen time or dialogue with our main heroes at all. It's actually Bianca who gets all the development, slowly turning from villain to hero and redeeming herself. There isn't as much interconnectivity between the realms like Avalar or the Dragon Worlds did, and on that point, when it's revealed that this used to be where the dragons lived, I just have a hard time seeing it. I try to imagine the dragons fitting into these small portals or wondering where all the clans lived. I'm guessing artisans lived in Sunrise Spring, but where did the peacekeepers or beastmakers live, or magic crafters? True, a lot can change in 1,000 years, but I still just can't totally buy it. It doesn't help that these worlds are using Avalar's money system. Why? Personally, I would have gone back to using the chests and gems from the first game. I think it would have hammered home the idea more that dragons used to live here. And on the subject of Avalar, a few side characters make a return as well, like the caveman and dinosaurs from Skelos Badlands, or Handel and Greta from Scorch, or the shadow demons from Colossus. Many times it comes off to me as the Leftovers game. By that I mean the developers took aspects from the second game and just copy and pasted them here. I always thought that Avalar was in a completely different dimension. Are they trying to suggest that these worlds are more connected than we thought? I don't find these choices bad, just odd. Even more baffling is this weird emphasis of having Spyro on a skateboard. One mini-game or two is fine, but did we really need it no less than 4 times and on the box art? One of which is a brutal race in the super bonus round, which for me was kind of a sucky reward for getting 100%. What happened to flying at your leisure and collecting treasure or going on a nice vacation? No, you worked your butt off to get 100%. Now we'll make you do more work and play a bunch of mini-games that I personally didn't even care for to begin with on hard mode, and then defeat the final boss. Again. Wow, what a nice present. And finally, this game was slightly rushed out in order for it to release during the actual Year of the Dragon, and while thankfully it wasn't as rushed like a certain game that shall not be mentioned, this still caused the game to have the most glitches out of the trilogy, including certain cutscenes not playing, a few levels freezing, and certain music tracks not being finished, so some levels had to share music tracks. If you have to listen to the Sunrise Spring music while fighting the sorceress, we got a problem. Thankfully, the Greatest Hits version fixed these problems, but still, we shouldn't have had these glitches to begin with. So, despite all this ranting, what do I like about the game? Well, at least the story is even more in-depth and interesting. Bianca gets a nice redemption arc, Sparks gets to show his stuff and gains abilities, most of the mini-games are fun, Spyro starts off with knowing how to swim, climb, and head bash, which from a story standpoint makes sense. All the levels are very diverse, and Stuart Copeland is back again for the music, and while the music isn't as magical or atmospheric as the previous two games, it still fits each level well, and there are some standout tracks, and at least the final cutscenes try to wrap up everyone's storyline since the dev team knew this was going to be their last hurrah with the Purple Dragon. So with this final adventure came new worlds to visit and even more diverse challenges with 150 baby dragons to find. Without further ado, let's get started. Same rules as before apply, flight levels, boss battles, and homeworlds are also included. These are my top 10 favorite levels from Spyro 3 Year of the Dragon. Number 10. The Midnight Mountain Homeworld. Funny how in my other two lists, most of my favorite homeworlds were the first ones, but here it's the last one. I find it interesting that out of all this game's hub worlds, only Evening Lake I would classify as a bona fide castle. All the other ones are basically just fancy buildings with a nice field around it. But what makes this one cool is that it's floating in the sky with having certain sections that you have to glide to. I love the deep blues and purples in the nighttime sky and this pink lava that spills over into outer space, I guess? Space! There's also a couple of cleverly hidden eggs, one of which is behind this wall that little me didn't notice at first because I just thought it was part of the background. Seriously, first Autumn Plains, now this. What was it with me with not being able to notice this stuff? Finally, one other praise I'll give to the game is that I'll just mention here. The previous two games seem to have this, well, I wouldn't say problem, but pattern where their difficulty levels were kinda all over the place. Most of their arguably hardest levels appeared midway through the game rather than closer to the end, like Treetops, Misty Bog, and Fracture Hills. However, it seems the dev team finally fixed this in the third entry because, at least to me, all the levels fit the difficulty of the hub world they were in. Sunrise Spring is fairly easy, Midday Garden starts the mediums, Evening Lake is a mix of medium to hard, and then when we finally get here, every level is either frustratingly tricky or enjoyably tricky. Beware players, this world is dark for a reason. Although it's small, this homeworld is a great breather before the final face-off with the sorceress. Number 9. Bamboo Terrace. You know, it's weird. It wasn't until just recently that I fully realized that this game has a ton of stages based off of actual real-life locations around the world, like Sunny Villa in Rome, Haunted Tomb in Egypt, Icy Peak in Canada, Dino Mines in the Wild West, etc. But the level where I kind of first realized this was this one, because make no mistake, the second you land here, you're in China. The plot's pretty standard. It's your typical, the enemy locked us out of the city, go open the doors for us. But what makes this slightly different is what made Crystal Glacier in the second game special. Much like the cave dudes, the NPCs here help you get across the level. And come on, who doesn't like cute pandas? Wait, does this literally make us the Dragon Warrior? Anyway, the music here is catchy and peaceful and sets the atmosphere perfectly. One question though, I always wondered what this sound was. What is that? Is it a dog sniffing around? Someone breathing through a straw? A backwards flute? What the heck is it? Well, questionable instruments aside, the architecture and stage design here is fantastic, and the mini-games are equally fun. One involves Bentley making his way up this mountain fortress thing in a reverse case of Indiana Jones. The other has you blasting Rhinox in this rail shooter thing. Why the pandas can't just wait for you to shoot first and then try to go home is anyone's guess. But hey, this is video game logic. We can't just take the straight path. That would be too easy. Still, with a name like Year of the Dragon, it was only fitting to try and honor the Chinese zodiac even more, and with a bit of patience, you can enjoy this little trip through the Celestial Empire. Number 8. Sheilas Lair. Like I said earlier, the addition of the 4 new playable characters was kind of a mixed bag for me. Sergeant Byrd was just okay, but the most slow and awkward in terms of controls. Agent 9 had some decent shooting segments, but I found his personality annoying, and Bentley's gameplay could be a tad awkward too, but he made up for it by having such a fun, aristocratic personality. But then there's Sheila. She, to me, is the most well-rounded character of the group. She has a likable and kind, but take-no-crap personality. She's smart and gives the most helpful plot exposition, and in terms of gameplay, she's fairly fast with smooth controls that operate the closest to Spyro's moveset, and her introductory level emphasizes this perfectly. I love bouncing around these pretty mountains with clever hidden treasure that you have to literally search high and low for. The only thing missing is a sound effect. I also like the mountain goats and how they're constantly trying to outprank each other.
Here, I was saving this to make an omelet, but I think you deserve it more. Hey, Sheila, let's play a joke. Take this egg and smash it on Billy's house, okay? I need to get him back for the last time he butted me off the cliff.
Jeez, how did all of these dragon eggs not get cracked even once? Oh, and one last thing. You're probably wondering what's a kangaroo doing in the Swiss Alps? Well, because she's Australian and she's in Austria.
It's a pun. Get it?
Although short and sweet, this is a really fun introduction to one of the best new characters and takes 2 different countries and finds a way to cleverly mesh them together. Number 7. Scorches Pit. Well, surprise, surprise, I guess a Spyro countdown isn't complete without having at least one boss battle on the list, and though there's one other that I like just a smidgen more for reasons I'll get into later, this one claims first prize for its creativity. First off, the cutscene leading up to this is probably the most unsettling thing I've seen in a kid's game.
Now, where was I? Ah, yes!
Then you're greeted by this rhino lizard bat thing in an arena that's seemingly inside the carcass of a dead whale or something.
You know, for kids!
Oh, and on top of all that, if the fight goes on long enough, he'll start regurgitating past bosses and enemies from other levels at you. Seriously, I'm just gonna come out and say it. The final fight with the sorceress is disappointing. Why couldn't have this been the final boss? True, he's arguably not very hard to beat, but at least his design and concept is way more badass, not to mention the earworm that is the techno fight music. And even cooler monster design, this is one instance where I think the developers played their trump card a bit too early. Number 6. Haunted Tomb.
Riddle me twice, Batman.
Arriving in an ancient Egyptian tomb, we're greeted by the followers of King Rover. Our assignment? Make it through all the curses and booby traps and we'll be awarded a great treasure. if we can solve all the guards' riddles first. I'd insert walk like an Egyptian here, but that would be too easy. Much like numbers 9 and 8, we continue our world tour of sorts with a stage that could be incredibly fun and frustrating at the same time. Why? Because there's two mini games here, one I love and one I hate. The first one involves Agent 9 having to fight his way through 5 arenas in which the number of enemies increases. Thankfully, the laser blasts bounce off the walls, so you can go crazy shooting here. That's the fun one. The nightmare-inducing one is the mission where you have to compete in a tank battle. Moving around is awkward, the aiming is terrible, and most of the time these guys can kill you in a hot second while I'm still trying to get my shots lined up. It's the one mission I never looked forward to when replaying the game. It was so difficult, it was the one thing that always kept me from beating the game 100%. So the real riddle here is, why is this stage included on my list when it contains my most despised side mission? Well, I just love the rest of the stage too much to not include it. I love exploring the tomb, I love the Anubis-themed people here, the snake slide, but most of all, I think the enemies here are pretty unique. It seems that the farther you got in the game, the more the levels started to kind of abandon using the Rhinox as enemies. Sure, there's Rhinox mummies here, but it's kind of hard to tell with them all bandaged up. There's also Anubi? Egyptian dogs, acid-spitting snakes, as well as these earth shapers who throw bombs, and the bombs are the only thing that can destroy them and the sarcophaguses that the mummies are spawning out of. It's not just a matter of charging or flaming your way through, you actually have to use some strategy to survive the tomb. With a creepy premise and clever riddles, this stage will really test your skills and your wits. Just don't let that stupid tank mission scar you for life.
Oh, I hate mummies.
Number 5. The Fireworks Factory. Yeah, you guys probably saw this coming. I don't think I found any top 10 list that didn't have this level on it. It seems everyone either likes or at least remembers this stage, and for good reason. And the developers must have been proud of it because it also serves as the title screen, the game over screen, and the ending scene of the game. Like it or not, this place was inescapable, and for one reason: ninjas. Just ninjas. Everywhere. Ninjas with bow staffs, ninjas with bombs, ninjas with rocket launchers, ninjas on the ceiling, ninjas continuously popping out of spawner boxes until you destroy them. Just ninja overload. And you know what? It worked. With this Enter the Dragon Mortal Kombat inspired background music, how can you not be excited? Also, since Zero the Dragon is referencing the Chinese zodiac, maybe this is why we got two different Oriental themed levels. Although I think this one's referencing Japan more than China, and it's kind of ironic that Bamboo Terrace has more fireworks in it than the actual fireworks factory, but whatever. Anyway, it's not just the ninjas that make this place awesome. There's 3 mini games that test all your skills in different ways. One involves Agent 9 having to shoot his way through a bunch of, well, more ninjas in a first-person shooter inspired by Doom. Even the guidebook entry makes a reference to it. Next to the tank mission in Haunted Tomb, this was another one that gave me a ton of trouble back in the day. All I can say is thank God this mission wasn't timed, or else I would have had a smashed controller. The next one has you fighting your way through a bunch of rooms to get to an egg, guarded by... do I need to say it? And finally, we get to my favorite of the 3, as Handle gives you a double power-up to fly around and blast 2 mythical dragons that can slowly grow their limbs back if you're not quick enough. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, good old Handle and Greta from my beloved Scorch level and Ripto's Rage are back. Again, why so many people from Avalar showing up in these so-called forgotten worlds is beyond me, but whatever. Greta especially gets the ultimate moment to shine when she decides to parody the Matrix not once, but twice.
It looks like you'll have to use this cannon to get across here. Simply climb aboard. As for me, I just have to free my mind.
Free your mind.
Just follow me.
awesome music, side missions, the return of old friends, and kick-ass cutscenes, this level more than earns the right to be remembered by all the fans. Although, for all the ninjas this stage can cram in, it'll never be able to achieve the levels of awesomeness of this. Number 4. Buzz's Dungeon. Yeah, weird, right? The first boss battle of the game is my favorite of the 4. On the surface, it's fairly standard and also the only boss in the game where you're not given any special power-ups. All you have to do is dodge his flame attacks and keep charging him until you knock him out of the arena, where Sheila will then stomp him into the lava. I know it's simple, I know it's easy, I don't care. I still love it, because strangely enough, for how basic it is, there's a surprising amount of atmosphere and uniqueness thrown into this stage. For one, like I said, it's the only boss where you're not given power-ups to help. 2, while the new characters help you out with the bosses in so much as they just throw or drop you power-ups to use, Sheila's the only one that actually physically gets involved and fights back. Which leads to 3, this arena sports my favorite boss battle music in the game. It's really catchy, but in a sad and dark kind of way, complementing the fire and lava that surrounds the area. It's so weird, we're fighting a giant frog for Pete's sake. This should be kind of lame, and yet somehow it isn't, with that background music sounding way more epic than it probably should. Why couldn't have this track been the music for the sorceress fight? Instead, I had to listen to... On a final note, what really gets me about this is the ending. Look at Buzz as he slowly slinks in the lava and dies. The way he struggles, his cry of pain, and that face. Geez, I actually almost feel sorry for him. He arguably emotes the most out of all the bosses in the whole trilogy. Even Ripto didn't cry out when he got the lava bath of death, but this?
You know, for kids!
Is Buzz an easy fight? Sure, but he's also proof that even a first boss can get the same epic treatment as the later ones. Number 3. The Evening Lake Homeworld. Out of all the homeworlds in the game, this one's my favorite. It may not seem very big at first until you dive down and realize that all its secrets lie below. Of the 4 worlds, this is the only one that sports an actual legit castle. It also sports the most creative design, with all the levels save for 2 of them being underwater. God forbid any of these people decide to visit each other. I'm amazed they were even able to leave to go work on the rocket. Either they all wear scuba gear when taking off, or they're just able to hold their breath for a long time. And while I'm on this subject, I should have mentioned earlier that Year of the Dragon got really creative with the portals. Unlike the first 2 games that used the same stone archways, this game decided to give every portal a unique design, giving the player a tiny clue as to what the level's gonna look like before they even enter it. That's neat. I remember spending a lot of time just peacefully swimming around and marveling at how immense this lake was, and the soundtrack only adds to this. Thankfully, the music glitch that happens here was fixed in the greatest hits version, so instead of having to hear Sunrise Spring again, we get to hear what I believe to be the best background song of the 4 homeworlds. And finally, there's the eggs. They're all hidden in some pretty clever spots. However, there's one in particular that took me a while to find. It's not just the most well-hidden egg in the game. I'll go so far as to say it's probably the most well-hidden collectible in the entire trilogy. I won't spoil too much, but I will say that if you know your biblical references, it's a funny surprise. Number 2. Cloudspires. Back to an early level, and this is where things start to get tough because this and the last entry are both pretty much tied for my number 1. I love them both equally, but for different reasons. As for why, we'll get there when we get there. But speaking about the game as a whole, there aren't too many stages that I find perfect. As you've probably noticed on this list, even the best of the best have that one section or minigame that I don't really care for. I say all this because Cloudspire holds the honor of being the only level where I can find no fault with it. I like every aspect of it, including all the mini-games. Here, your mission takes you to a city in the clouds where these fairy creatures create the weather, and it's your job to get the cloud generator working again. Since it's an early stage, it's still treated as a bit of a tutorial to remind you how to fight enemies and glide. But looking past that, this is a really well-designed stage with nice pastel colors and a whimsical feel to it, which is held by the enemies that are modeled after the Valkyries. And then there's the mini-games, which are simple but really adorable and funny. One has you ringing a bunch of bells to wake up a rather menacing looking rain cloud. The other has you corralling 3 fire seeds into a pot to create a sun, which not only has this semi-epic moment where the seeds fuse together, but also, of course, the sun is wearing sunglasses.
You might as well be walking on the sun.
With great visuals, characters, and sound design, this is a really creative early stage that makes you want to appreciate the beauty of the weather more. And my number 1 favorite level in Spyro 3 Year of the Dragon is Crystal Islands. Where do I even begin? Well, remember in my Spyro 2 countdown and how much I gushed over the Glimmer level? Now crank that up to 11. For as much as I like Cloudspire's, this stage ultimately wins out because I adore the environment and level design here. I love all the colors here, the humongous glowing crystals and how much they stand out against the beautiful night sky. And the way all the missions, gems, and eggs are laid out here forces you to have to explore every nook and cranny, which is fine by me because I could glide around here for hours. The main mission is straightforward. Just make it to the end of the stage while fighting off the most unique and bizarre enemies of the game, all of which are made out of crystal, including giant bears, flying beavers, and these tiki palm tree things that explode into rainbows.
Weird plant.
Then there's the magicians who stole some magic from the sorceress and, much like the pandas in Bamboo Terrace, also help you progress through the stage. They're mostly polite, though I always get a laugh out of how they try to sound amazing and try to one-up each other.
Would you like to see a magic trick? Watch carefully. As you can see, there is nothing up my left sleeve, nothing up my right sleeve, but now, with a wave of my hands and the magic word, fuck you! It's magic!
Then there's the mini-games, all of which are super fun. First, you thought the snake slide in Haunted Tomb was something? That was just the warm-up for this. Granted, it can be a bit tricky to stay on it, but as long as you stick to the middle, you should be fine. And if you want to grab all the gems, you'll have to go down a couple times, which is fine by me. Next is the Bentley Challenge, where you have to literally play whack-a-mole. It can be a bit frustrating, but even if you lose a few times, it makes up for it by being hilarious. And finally, there's an egg thief to catch, and he takes off in an airplane, making you have to use a power-up to fly all around the level. In fact, you need it just to find the last egg and a couple gems. But thief or not, it's an awesome feeling to just fly around and enjoy the wonderful view of this amazing-looking level, at least to me. With fun games and pretty visuals, Crystal Islands is easily my pick for my favorite level. Well guys, that wraps up my countdown of all 3 games in the original Spyro trilogy. I hope you enjoyed this little retrospective about one of the biggest games of my childhood. I had a ton of fun looking back on this series, and I can't wait to see what the Reignited trilogy has in store for us. Either way, the arguably best version of Spyro will soon be enjoyed by a new generation. To the dev team at Insomniac, my hat goes off to you. This is Cartoon 12 signing off, and if you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe. I'll have more top 10 lists soon, and I'll see you all next time.